I will share a point of view from us on how you have to approach this to make sure there is return on all these investments as well. We start from that there is a few challenges that we see ahead in this industry. Some of them have been around for several years, and some of them are increasing now. Quality. Under quality, we put the whole discussion on food safety, how product tastes, how long it lasts, and these things. Very, very important. We also put things like consumers are going to get more and more interested in the origin of food. Is it authentic, the ingredients and so on? It was interesting to listen to the previous conversation on ingredients and so on. There is a trend that becomes more and more important. That is under quality for us. Sustainability, being a large packaging provider, of course, having sustainable solutions both from a packaging point of view, but also from food waste, for example. How can you in manufacturing secure that there is less food waste? So a bigger share of what you buy into a factory actually becomes products you sell, so you lose less. That helps productivity, but productivity has many different aspects. There's cost aspects, there's time aspects, and there is food waste losses as well in productivity. Productivity always turns into euros or dollars somehow at the end of the day. Then there's growth. You know, there is customers of ours or food companies who are capacity constrained. You make a great innovation with a product and it sells much better than you thought. And then what do? Because you cannot cope with the growth. Some of these technologies ahead will help you do that. I will try to share some examples of this. For us, it's also the fourth industrial revolution. And how long has that been around? Yeah, a few years. But it takes a long time, of course, until it's deployed and implemented in industries, until we understand what to use all these new technologies for. But it's important to understand that these are trends that runs over many years. So there is almost 100 years or 90 years, 90 to 100 years between each industrial trend or revolution. And we will see if there is a fifth industrial revolution sometime. We are not aware of anything. I think many things are covered under the fourth. It's very important also that technology sets the pace. So what drives the pace of this transformation is the development of new technologies. These technologies are most often not developed uniquely for the food and beverage industry. They can be developed for very different applications, but then the more explored they get, the more you find out that they can be used for other things. So technologies like augmented reality, we talked a lot about AI up here before, you know, connectivity, 5G for example. 5G will enable a lot of things that is not enabled by Wi-Fi today because of the latency in Wi-Fi. So with 5G, a lot of things will become possible. It's very important also in our point of view that this pace of change is increasing all the time. So the way we look at it is that today, this very moment, is the slowest pace of change I will experience for the rest of my life. So the pace will only go up all the time on these things, driven by technology primarily. Change is adopted at a different pace. It's very interesting because the fastest rate of change is the technologies themselves. Then comes us as individuals. You know, we all use smartphones, and it's very interesting in big multinational companies. Individuals adopt to use of new technology much quicker privately as individuals than businesses do. Because in businesses you have business processes, you have other big systems, things have to work with. So the pace of change is slower in businesses than with individuals. That's why we start using new technologies more often privately before we start applying them in businesses. Last comes public policy. And that, because all of a sudden a new technology will enable something, but there is no regulation or law that sets the limits for it. There was some discussions up on AI, for example, and there are many other areas where public policy is not keeping up with the pace of change. It's important to be aware of that when you run a business. The formula for success, the way we look at it, you need a lot of imagination of what you want to achieve. Then you need the technologies and you need data, because most of these technologies we talk about, they don't do anything without data in there. That will give you business outcomes. So for us, it's very important that you focus on what you want to achieve, and then you use the technologies and data to achieve that. And you need to be able to imagine things, because the pace of change with technologies makes things that was not possible yesterday possible tomorrow. So you cannot be limited with what you know all the time. So you must have a fair piece of imagination in this. The business outcomes, they're unlimited. You know, it's our own imagination that sets the borders for the type of business outcomes. Here's just some examples from other types of industries. You know, the personalization of products is going very, very fast. Productivity, you know, things that was absolutely not possible a few years ago is absolutely possible now when it comes to automation of factories and these type of things. Health and well-being, we all know that. Transparency in supply chains, knowing where stuff is and so is possible. Autonomous vehicles, there's a lot of different thinking right now of whether that's going to be a trend or not a trend. At least in where I come from in Scandinavia, you see a lot of autonomous vehicles in harbors. You know, when it's going to be publicly used in normal cities, I think it's a long time until that will happen. But you're going to see a lot of these uses. Many different type of outcomes, and even life-changing things, of course, for people that couldn't walk can all of a sudden walk with help from these things and so on. So being able to imagine a lot of different outcomes are very possible and important. Another thing we look at is you know, the technologies in itself, what we call in this industry 4 technologies, all the technologies that comes with the 4th industrial revolution, they gives a certain improvement of whatever you want to improve on its own right. But if you combine it with other continuous improvement methodologies or lean methods or whatever, in our case, we use a lot of the TPM methodology, total productive maintenance. When you combine those two things and marry them together in a good way, you get even more result of it. Because the technologies enable things that you could not do before, when you only had traditional continuous improvement methodology. So this is how we look at it. Let's look at a few examples in food and beverage. If I start with quality, being able to predict failures that will happen in food manufacturing before they happen, by understanding different types of, through the use of data, you can see if this happens, this happens, this happens, it's likely to be a failure. And then you predict that and you do something before you have produced a lot of waste, or before you have done something wrong with your product so it's not safe, maybe, and these things. There is also, in quality assurance, for example, you can spend a lot of money on quality assurance if you use a completely random process. But by steering that process a little bit better and using data for how to do it, you can optimize the cost, so you can secure the same level of quality at a lower cost, for example. On sustainability, I think reducing waste in operations, just knowing where the waste occurs, very important with having transparency on the data. You talked about sugar tax before, or other types of ingredients. You know, in any product, some ingredients are more expensive than others. So making sure that you don't waste those ingredients. In food manufacturing in general, a lot of the cost in food manufacturing comes from waste that happens in the supply chain, often in the manufacturing. Some is unavoidable, but a lot of it can be reduced. I think we also believe that through connecting packages, we believe in a future where every single package will have some sort of active digital identity on it, so the pack can connect. We believe that there are cases, for example, to incentivize recycling. You know, recycling of packages is very different in different parts of the world, from that almost 90% of all packages sold are recycled to no. And I think in a circular economy, in a low-carbon circular economy, it's very important to be able to recycle things and reuse them for new things. And you can, through connected packages, of course, with different incentive schemes, incentivize consumers to return packages. On productivity, I think reducing operational cost, the cost of running an operation per unit to compete is a continuous process that never ends, of course. And that is to compensate for inflation, or other types of things, to continuously improve that. A lot of examples around how these type of technologies help that. We will look at an example later. Reducing working capital through a connected supply chain. If you know where your product are at any given point in time in a long, complex supply chain, you can optimize that much more, so there is less product in transfer and less product in warehouse. That way, you reduce working capital, of course, and you free up capital to use for other things than having them as in stock. Growth, I think, by just sweating your assets more. So, we have many cases where customers felt that they were completely capacity constrained. We are now doing the maximum of what we can get out of this factory or this line or something. There is always a bit more you can get. The more you have done, the more difficult it gets, of course, but there is always more output you can get out of it. And when you have a growth problem, if you happen to launch a product that works much better than you anticipated, being able to do a few of these things to free up some capacity and actually use it and manage that growth is always a lot quicker than adding more capacity. Because it has long lead times, buying a new line or something takes a long time. I think there is, related to growth, you can engage with consumers a lot more as well through connected packages, of course. When you connect the package, it can become a marketing interface, a communication channel between a brand owner and a consumer. Let's look at a few examples. So if we take in on sweat your assets, this is a few cases that we have from the real world. This was a customer who could not manage the growth due to capacity constraint. They launched a plant-based beverage that worked a lot better than they thought. So what we did, we went in and through a lot of connected equipment, you understand the data and you understand where the losses are. And then through some predictive analytics, you also predict where some of the losses will occur. And then you transform those losses through different improvement activities, continuous improvement activities. So you free up downtime to uptime, and thereby you can produce more. And in a capacity constraint situation, every minute has a value, of course. So here you can, you can turn 30 minutes cleaning time into production time by doing the cleaning procedure a bit more efficient, by understanding the detailed data of it. You can also predict a failure that will occur, so you do a maintenance activity before the failure has occurred, and thereby you don't lose the production time. A number of these things increased the overall utilization of that factory with 12 percentage points. So that meant for our customer that they could produce 6 million units that they couldn't produce before. And they coped with that growth for another 12 months. Then, of course, if it continues, they continue investing in more capacity. Reducing operational costs to compete. This is a case from cheese manufacturing. I don't know how much you know about cheese manufacturing when I describe the pain here. This complicated graph here with all the dots is the humidity in cheese. So, or the moisture, how much moisture is there in the cheese. The more moisture you can have in the cheese and still keep the taste and flavor, the more cheese you make for a given amount of milk. So you improve the yield by controlling the moisture level. When you have a lot of variation in moisture, you reduce moisture sometimes, and then you get less cheese for a given amount of milk. So this was a large variability here. What we did was we did prescriptive analytics using a large amount of process data. So a lot of different process data in the cheese manufacturing process is used to optimize different functions to then reduce the variabilities. You see the difference between the left and the right hand side here. So you reduce the variability of moisture in cheese and you move the level a little bit up, 1 percentage point or 1.5 percentage points. That is a lot of money for a big cheese producer. This specific case was $1 million a year saved because you get more cheese for a given amount of milk. Connecting packages to drive growth and productivity. One pain for many customers is that they don't know when the product leaves the factory gate, they lose control over it. Where is it? How far has it come? Has it arrived? Did it go where it was supposed to go? And these things. Through connected packages, through providing an active digital identity on a pack, so a unique code that somehow either through a device you scan or through a phone or something, could possibly in the future be other types of technologies like RFID and these things, you would always know. And the benefits of this is of course that you can talk directly to consumers if you scan on an individual pack. You can incentivize consumers to scan. There can be lotteries, there can be different marketing activities, and you can that way drive growth. But you can also improve consumer trust. So when someone wants to know, is this an original package? Is this authentic content and these type of things? You can secure that through different type of traceability solutions that links to a unique identity on a package or on a secondary package, a tray of packs, etc. You can also reduce the working capital a lot because you know where your stuff is. For example, when you produce aseptic product or UHT products, you do incubation for a long period, maybe 4, 5, 6 days to make sure that everything is okay before you distribute. Why do you do that? Because when you distribute, it's very difficult to find something again, should there be a problem. Those very few cases when there is a problem, it's very difficult to find. When you have these type of connected packages, either individual packages or pallets and secondary units, it's very easy to trace where they are. And you can optimize that so you have much less in warehouse and much more in transit on the way, because you will always find it again. That helps reducing working capital, and that's normally a lot of money for food and beverage. Trying to sum up this, I think we see that there is a lot of demands increasing on the food and beverage industry, driven by consumers, driven by the general sustainability trend, driven by cost pressures from retailers, etc. and so on. I think we also recognize that there is a fourth industrial revolution that is driven by technology and digital technologies primarily and data. The speed of change is much, much higher than before. So what we could spend 5 years on doing in the past, we can maybe spend 1 year on doing now. Otherwise we will be behind. We will fall behind very quickly. I think it's very important to focus on business outcomes to secure return. It's easy to invest in a lot of technologies if you don't know which problem you want to solve. Then there might be a risk that it's not going to give so much return. One other thing that we have learned over the years is that you must start from a big dream. You must have a big dream, and then you must start small. You must try, because you learn by doing. You don't learn by talking about these things, you learn by doing. And most important of everything is that you actually start doing something, because of the speed of change and everyone is doing something. So not doing something is not an option. On that note, I would like to leave it here now. I don't know if there is any questions. Thank you very much.